The first time Ethan Caldwell laughed in my face, I knew right there this wasn't about a delayed payment anymore. It was about power. He stood in the doorway of his brand-new hillside home in Paradise Valley, Arizona, arms folded like he owned the whole desert, and looked me dead in the eye before saying, "You can try chasing the money, Mason, but by the time lawyers are done, you'll spend more than you're owed." Then he smiled. Not angry, not nervous, just calm, smug, like a man completely certain he had already won. "My name's Mason Reed. I'm 43 years old, and I've been a licensed general contractor in Arizona for almost 2 decades. I'm not flashy, I don't advertise on billboards, I don't drive one of those giant chrome trucks with my logo plastered all over the side. Most of my work comes through referrals, and in this business that means everything. People trust your name or they don't. And for 18 years my name stayed clean because I showed up on time, did exactly what I promised, and left clients with work I could stand behind. That's why when the Caldwells hired me for their kitchen remodel, I honestly thought it would be another straightforward project. Their place sat tucked into the mountain, modern glass walls, desert landscaping, infinity pool out back overlooking the city lights. One of those homes that somehow looks like a luxury resort and a museum at the same time. Total contract came out to $134,000. Custom walnut cabinetry, quartzite countertops flown in from Italy, built-in refrigeration, lighting redesign, full flooring transition. The kind of project where every detail matters and every invoice makes your accountant sweat. Ethan and his wife, Camille, seemed easy enough at first. Camille had expensive taste and opinions on everything. Ethan mostly stayed quiet and nodded while pretending he wasn't listening. They approved every stage in writing, every finish, every adjustment, every delivery. My foreman Luis even joked one afternoon, "Man, these people approve faster than anyone I've seen. Makes me nervous." I laughed and told him he'd been in construction too long. We wrapped the job beautifully. Seriously, one of the cleanest kitchens my crew ever built. Luis stood there wiping down the island and said, "I kinda hate leaving this one." I sent final invoice that same evening. Net 10 days. Standard. Nothing weird. 3 days passed. Then 5. Then 10. No payment. I called Camille first because she usually handled scheduling. Straight to voicemail. Left a message. She texted back 2 hours later. "Hi Mason, we're reviewing a few final details with our interior consultant. We'll be in touch shortly." Sounded normal enough. I let it go. Another week passed. No check. No wire. No explanation. I called again. This time she answered, voice sweet as ever. "Oh hey Mason. Yes, we're still reviewing some things." "Like what?" I asked. Little pause. Then she said, "Just some finish concerns." That caught me off guard because nobody had mentioned any concerns at walkthrough. "Can you send a list?" I asked. "Sure," she said. Never sent one. Another week passed. Then another. My office manager Dana pulled me aside one morning and set the invoice folder on my desk. "You need to deal with this." Dana's been with me 9 years, and she has this terrifying gift where she can smell bad clients before I do. "You think they're stalling?" I asked. She gave me a look over her glasses. "Mason, rich people stall prettier than everyone else, but yeah, that one landed hard." So I drove out there myself. It was late afternoon, sun dropping low over Camelback Mountain. Ethan answered after a long delay. Opened the door halfway. Didn't invite me in. "Can I help you?" he asked. Calm. Too calm. "I'm here about the final invoice. Still reviewing." "For over a month?" He shrugged. "There are issues." "Show me." He hesitated, then stepped aside like he was doing me a favor. I walked into that kitchen and immediately knew exactly what game they were playing. Camille pointed at the edge of the island. "There's a scratch." There wasn't. She pointed at cabinet stain. "That tone feels darker than expected." It matched the sign sample perfectly. Then the backsplash grout. Then a drawer glide. Then pendant spacing. Tiny invented problems stacked one after another like they'd rehearsed this over wine the night before. I stayed calm and pulled every signed approval from my tablet. Dates. Photos. Emails. Camille's own messages saying, "Looks perfect," and "Love this." Ethan barely glanced at any of it. Then he leaned against the counter and smiled. "Maybe we just see quality differently." I looked at him and said, "You approved every phase. If there was an issue I'd fix it, but this isn't real." He gave this little laugh. The kind that gets under your skin because it's so casual. Then take us to court. Camille crossed her arms. We already spoke with an attorney. Ethan stepped closer. By the time you spend legal fees chasing one invoice, you'll regret it. For a second nobody said anything. I could hear their refrigerator humming behind me and the pool equipment outside. And I don't know how to explain this exactly, but sometimes in life everything suddenly gets very clear. Not emotional, not dramatic, just clear. They had planned to keep the kitchen and keep the money. They thought I'd get frustrated, maybe threaten something, maybe send a few emails, then eventually move on because fighting wasn't worth the headache. Ethan had already decided what kind of man I was. A contractor with tools. A guy he could wear down. What he didn't know, what neither of them knew, was before construction ever became my full-time career, I spent 7 years working as a legal assistant inside a Phoenix firm handling construction disputes. Mechanics liens, contract claims, property enforcement. I knew exactly how Arizona paperwork could turn a handshake into leverage. And more importantly, I knew the deadline. 120 days from completion. I got back in my truck, shut the door, and checked the calendar. Day 87. I sat there for maybe 30 seconds staring at my steering wheel while the sun hit the windshield and turned the whole cab gold. Then I called my attorney, Greg Halpern. He picked up half annoyed because it was nearly 6. What happened? He asked. I looked back at that giant glass house on the hill and said, Greg, I think I've got a client who just made a very expensive mistake. Greg didn't even let me finish the sentence before he said, You still inside the filing window? And I remember glancing at the dashboard clock and answering, Day 87. There was this short pause. Then he gave a low whistle and said, Well, sounds like everybody woke up lucky today except the Caldwells. That made me laugh for the first time all week, but I wasn't smiling for long because the second I pulled out of their driveway, my brain switched gears completely. Anger's one thing, paperwork is another. By the time I got home, Dana had already emailed over every contract document, every approval, every change order, every invoice and delivery receipt. Luis dropped by with final install photos still on his phone. My dining table looked like a trial exhibit. My wife Emily came in halfway through carrying tea, saw papers spread across every surface, and asked, Bad client? I looked up and said, The kind who thinks expensive lawyers erase signatures. She kissed the top of my head and said, Then I'd hate to be them. Greg had everything before sunrise. By 10 the next morning he called. It's clean, he said. One of the cleanest files I've seen all year. You documented like a paranoid accountant. That a compliment. Best one I can give. We filed that mechanics lien with Maricopa County before noon. $134,000 principal, statutory interest, attorney fees. Officially recorded against the property. The moment that clerk stamped it, that house changed. Same walls, same pool, same $1 million desert view. But legally it had weight attached to it now. They couldn't refinance. Couldn't transfer title cleanly. Couldn't pretend the debt didn't exist anymore. And then we waited. 48 hours later my phone exploded while I was walking a framing inspection. Camille Caldwell. I answered and nearly had to pull the phone away from my ear. You cannot be serious, she snapped. Gone was the soft polished designer voice. You filed a lien against our house? A valid one, I said. Remove it immediately. Pay the invoice. She laughed, sharp and panicked. This is insane. No, not paying your contractor was insane. Then she said the part Greg and I had both been expecting. We have buyers. There it was. Excuse me. I asked, even though I already knew. We listed privately. We accepted an offer. We close in 32 days. I leaned against the stud wall and looked at the crew pretending not to eavesdrop. That sounds time sensitive. Don't do this. Camille, I didn't do this. Silence. Then Ethan got on the line. Voice colder than before. Name your number. I almost smiled because suddenly we were having a real conversation. Principal plus interest plus legal fees. $143,600. Ridiculous. Your signatures say otherwise. We'll challenge the lien. Then your title company gets to explain that delay to your buyers. He exhaled hard. You're enjoying this. Funny thing is, I wasn't. People always imagine revenge feels amazing. Most of the time it feels exhausting. I said, Ethan, I wanted exactly one thing this entire time. To be paid for work you approved and kept. He muttered something away from the phone, probably to Camille, then came back. We'll wire the original contract amount today. No, excuse me. You had weeks to do that. You're extorting us. No, I'm invoicing consequences. That shut him up for a second. Then he said very quietly, if this sale falls apart over paperwork, and I cut him off, that would be unfortunate. We hung up. Greg called 20 minutes later laughing because apparently their attorney had already reached out. A guy named Martin Shields from one of those glossy Scottsdale firms where everybody wears perfect suits and bills in 6-minute increments. He wanted a constructive resolution. Translation, they were panicking. Greg put him on speaker. Martin started smooth. Mr. Reed's lien seems aggressive. Greg said, unpaid invoices tend to feel that way. Martin tried arguing workmanship. Greg emailed him the signed approvals before he finished talking. Dead silence. Then Martin said, well, perhaps there's room to negotiate. Greg looked at me and muted the call. You want to shave anything? I thought about it for maybe 2 seconds. Thought about payroll, materials, lost sleep, Dana chasing emails, Louise finishing every detail exactly right while these people smiled and lied. No, Greg unmuted. Full amount. Martin sighed like this was somehow personally exhausting for him. I'll relay that. By the next day, Dana started hearing neighborhood chatter. Paradise Valley is funny that way. Wealthy zip code, small town gossip. Realtor whispers. Contractors talk. Designers definitely talk. Word got around fast that the Caldwells had a lien tied to their sale. A tile supplier I know texted me. Heard Ethan Caldwell's place got sticky. You okay? I answered, better than him. That night Emily and I were sitting outside with dinner, and she asked if I was nervous they'd somehow fight it. Not really, I said. Then why do you still look tense? I thought about that. Because people like Ethan don't hate losing money. They hate losing control. 2 days later Camille called again. This time quieter. Almost shaky. Mason, she said. The buyers are threatening to walk. I let her talk. Their lender wants clear title. The escrow officer says this needs resolution by Friday. Correct. Can we please work something out? It was the first honest thing she'd said in over a month. I could hear pressure all over her voice. Maybe Ethan pacing nearby. Maybe their realtor whispering in the background. I said, Camille, why did you do this? She didn't answer for a second. Then very softly, Ethan thought, contractors expect negotiation at the end. I actually laughed. Couldn't help it. You thought keeping 6 figures and inventing scratches was negotiation? She didn't answer. Ethan grabbed the phone. 138. No, 140. No, come on. 143.6. Wire transfer. Certified. Today. You're unbelievable. And yet here we are. He cursed under his breath and hung up. 3 hours later Dana came into my office with this grin she only gets maybe twice a year. She held up her laptop and said, incoming wire. Full amount. Every cent attorney fees. Interest. Everything. I just stared at the screen for a second because honestly, after weeks of tension your body doesn't know how to relax immediately. Luis walked by and I said, we got paid. He threw both hands up and yelled loud enough for the entire office to hear. Dana actually clapped. Greg drafted the lien release. We signed it and held it. That part mattered. Because escrow still wasn't closing until timing lined up. Friday afternoon Camille called again. She sounded wrung out. Escrow needs confirmation. You'll have it. When? I looked at Greg. He nodded. 2 hours before close. She inhaled sharp like she wanted to say something ugly, then stopped herself because leverage changes tone real fast. At exactly 12:15 Greg filed the release. By 2:30 the sale recorded. Their house closed. Buyers got keys. And just like that, the debt was over. Or at least I thought it was. For about a week after escrow closed, life got weirdly quiet again, and I was more grateful for that than I expected. No angry voicemails, no attorneys, no surprise emails from people using words like disputed workmanship and seeking immediate clarification. Just normal work. Estimates, site visits, coffee too early in the morning, Dana keeping everybody on schedule and Luis arguing with cabinet deliveries like usual. Honestly, that quiet felt better than revenge ever could. Then one Tuesday I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Guy introduces himself as Trevor Nolan. Says he just bought the Caldwell property. Asks if I've got a minute. I figured maybe something needed service work, maybe a hinge adjustment or appliance walkthrough. I told him sure. He said, I wanted to ask who did our kitchen. I laughed and said, that'd be me. There was this pause, and then he said, "Well, whoever did it did incredible work. My wife and I have had 3 people walk in and ask who built it." I leaned back in my chair and smiled. "Glad you like it." Then Trevor says something I still think about. "Ethan actually gave us your number during closing. Said you were excellent, just very serious about paperwork." I nearly choked laughing. Dana looked up from across the office because she could tell from my face something was funny. Trevor kept talking. They wanted a guest house remodel, pool house cabinetry, maybe a patio expansion later. We scheduled the walkthrough for Friday. That Friday turned into another referral. Then another. One neighbor wanted a full outdoor kitchen. Another wanted a luxury bath renovation. A designer I'd never worked with before reached out after seeing Trevor's place. Within a month, we had just over $350,000 booked in signed contracts, all inside the same neighborhood. Dana kept shaking her head every time another Paradise Valley number popped up. "You realize Ethan accidentally became your best marketing campaign." She wasn't wrong, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy the irony. But the truth is, what stuck with me wasn't the money. It was that moment at Ethan's front door when he smiled and decided I'd fold because he assumed he understood exactly who I was. Maybe that's the part people miss sometimes. Construction isn't just lumber and tile and invoices. It's trust. You're handing somebody access to your home, your time, your money, sometimes your biggest investment in the world. And that only works when both people respect the deal. Break that trust, and suddenly everything changes. A few months later, I saw Ethan one more time. Total accident. Gas station off Lincoln Drive. I was filling up my truck, and he pulled in at the next pump. He spotted me immediately. For a second, neither of us said anything. Then he gave this little nod and said, "Looks like business is good." I said, "Can't complain." He stared out toward the road and gave a dry laugh. "Trevor told half the neighborhood about that kitchen. He seems happy with it." "Yeah." Another pause. Then Ethan looked at me and said something I genuinely didn't expect. "I should have paid you from the start." No excuse. No spin. Just that. I nodded. Would have saved everybody time. He almost smiled. Probably saved me a fortune too. Then he got in his SUV and drove off. And I stood there pumping gas thinking how strange life gets sometimes. Because I never wanted revenge. I never wanted leverage. I didn't want their sale hanging by a thread or their attorney scrambling or any of the drama that came after. I wanted exactly what every contractor wants. Do the work right, get paid fairly, go home. That's it. But every once in a while somebody mistakes professionalism for weakness, and they think paperwork is a bluff, and they think because they've got more money or a bigger house or a smoother lawyer they get to rewrite the agreement after the work is already done. And every once in a while reality reminds them signatures still matter. So now I'm curious what you think. If you were in my shoes, would you have filed the lien too? Or would you have taken the loss and walked away? And be honest, when somebody tries to use power and money to corner the little guy, where do you draw the line between business and justice? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I've got a feeling this one's going to split the room.